Today, we're starting a new series on prayer. Prayer can seem like a broad topic and can also seem a little confusing or scary sometimes. I know even to some, prayer might seem like an intimidating thing to do, but that's okay. I even find myself asking questions all the time about it. So in this series, we're going to answer some common questions about prayer. To help us do that, we'll be looking at some really powerful prayers found throughout the Bible. From the good times to the bad, there are all sorts of prayers that famous people in the Bible have prayed. We'll read through them, break them down, and learn how we can pray about anything we face in life. But before we dive into that, let's talk about what prayer is and why it's important in the Christian life. First, let's define what prayer actually is. Simply put, prayer is how we talk to God. Like I said a second ago, there are a bunch of examples of prayer found throughout the Bible, and that shows us that prayer is not a new thing, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. Prayer is just talking to God, and there are thousands of ways to do that. And as we go through this series, we'll find that people have been talking to God for a long time, and we can learn a lot from each of their stories. So now that we've defined what prayer means, let's ask ourselves a few questions to further understand. Number one, why don't we pray? Have you ever heard someone pray and it was like listening to a beautiful poem or song or something? Then you start to pray and it's filled with ums and uhs. Same here. That can be intimidating, and it sometimes feels like we have to approach God in a specific or fancy way. But that isn't true, because we serve a God that loves us and meets us just as we are. Imperfect. Other times, we might not pray because we have the fear of silence. Have you ever told someone something super important to you and then they just don't say anything? Being left unread is the worst. Sometimes we might have something in life we want to bring to God, but the idea of not receiving an answer is scary. However, God never leaves us unread, and we'll talk more about that in a second. One more reason we might not pray is because we are selfish. I admit it. I'm selfish. I love it when things go well for me. Sometimes we avoid prayer because we know that God might convict us to stop doing something we enjoy. Or other times, life might be going so well for us that we don't really feel like we need to pray. But as we'll see, we should always be in prayer, no matter our circumstance. And that leads us to our next question. Why should we pray? Well, first, we should pray because it's our connection to God. Like we said earlier, prayer is our way of talking to God. I promise you, not a single relationship has ever been good without communication. If you never talk to your friends, do you really think you're going to stay friends for very long? Not a chance. See, God has given us the ability to speak directly with Him. Notice I said with Him, not just to Him. Think about it. If we can connect with Him, wouldn't that also mean that He can connect with us? Yes, it does. So we should pray because that's how we can stay connected to God. We should also pray because life can be overwhelming. Maybe finals week is killing you. Maybe you're struggling with your significant other. Maybe you're working way too many hours just to make a payment on time. And it might be so tempting to fill the empty space in between those things by just binging a TV show or listening to depressing music. But those things won't help in the long run. Alternatively, coming to God in prayer can help immediately. God desires for us to approach Him unfiltered and unrefined. Whatever is on our mind, we are called to bring it to Him. Philippians 4:6 says, "Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done." Those overwhelming things in life might stay there a while, but asking God for comfort or strength in those moments can make the overwhelming things a lot easier to navigate. Another important reason why we should pray is because trust comes before faith. You might be asking, aren't trust and faith the same thing? Crazy enough, they're actually not. The Bible shows us in Hebrews 11:1 that faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. In other words, faith is our confidence in the things that we can't understand about God. Trust, however, is confidence in the character of God. When we trust God enough to start praying to Him vulnerably, we then begin to grow in faith. Which brings us to our last question about prayer. What happens when we pray? When we pray to God, we grow closer to Him. Like I said earlier, how can you have a good relationship with someone you don't even talk to? I remember when I graduated high school, I was sure my friends would be people I would know for the rest of my life. But as life went on, not seeing those people every day caused us to grow apart. Who would have thought? This wasn't in a bad way. We just naturally stopped talking as much. If we stop talking to God, we'll grow apart from Him too. But if we keep talking to Him, we'll just continue to grow closer and closer to him. And as we grow closer to him, we begin to see his hand in our lives in beautiful ways. Another thing that happens when we pray is we practice spiritual discipline. Now, the word discipline sometimes seems like a negative thing, but it's good to have discipline in our lives. Good habits such as exercising, getting enough sleep, and eating healthy will positively impact so many areas of our life. And prayer is no different. All those other things are physical disciplines. Prayer is one of the spiritual disciplines. Not only is it healthy for us physically, but it strengthens us spiritually. And that is a strength unlike any other. It allows us to draw on God's guidance, wisdom, and truth to navigate all sorts of life situations. A good way to practice prayer as a habit could be to just start talking to God while you drive instead of turning on music. Lastly, when we pray, God always answers us. Remember how I said God never leaves us on red? Well, it's true. God always answers our prayer. It just might not be when or how we expect him to. When we're set in an expectation of how God will answer our prayers, we might actually be missing the answer he's trying to give us. And as hard as it is, sometimes even silence is an answer. Regardless of what God's answer looks like, because we know him, we can know that his answer is the right one. Now, you might be thinking, Brock, you just said so many words. What does prayer look like in real life? That's a great question, and we'll see a lot of examples throughout this series. But for now, let's look at a couple super practical ones here. First and foremost, Jesus actually gave us an example of what prayer should look like in Matthew 6:9-13. This, then, is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil. Like I mentioned, prayer is a habit to be built. And no matter how you try to build it, make sure to do it every single day. It doesn't have to be long and in-depth. Just start with something small, like praying first thing in the morning before looking at your phone, or praying in the car on your way to work or school or wherever, or even praying right before every meal, whether it's in public or by yourself. Prayer also doesn't just have to be in a church or somewhere private. Prayer can be anywhere at any time. And in this series, we'll actually see a lot of crazy places where people have prayed. So come back next week as we begin to look at one of those places. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.